Mobile RL, a passive measurement tool using the mobile. After which we're going to hear from our various panelists, and I'll ask Gali to manage that discussion. Omri, are we ready to do our fast and cool?
Sure.
Please, take it away.
Hi there. So what I'm going to show you revolves around technology, which was developed here in Israel. We've taken some technology we knew from the telecom world and spinned it off to the media world. To be more exact, to the hands of those who research media. So basically, let's see how you, okay, here. Works? Yes. So measuring media, especially TV and radio, usually calls for some means. And on the right, bottom right, you'll see how TV had been measured and is being measured to date, mainly by people meters placed at the homes near TV sets for logging with the help of panelists that log in and out as to their TV activity. On the left, you could see some mobile devices, and these mobile devices are built-for-purpose ones, and that would be pager-like PPMs, portable people meters, watches that do that, and so on. And they had been used and are used for collecting the media exposure, mainly radio one, of panelists which were recruited for these panels by marketing research companies. What we came up with was the idea that these hardware-focused devices are something that actually belongs to the past. So we all have the best, probably the best ever consumer device in our hands, or to be more exact, in our pockets, in our bags, and that's the mobile phone. And we actually moved these capabilities of detecting what someone is watching or hearing into a phone as a software. And the software runs either on your mobile, replacing the mobile devices, and that's the destination, or on a generic tablet, which is put at the home. We've actually added, due to a request of customers, the ability to log in and out using a remote control. But basically, that's the same thing. It's a software that runs on a mobile device in a mobile environment, detects what is heard near this device, transmits its detection to a server side where things are deciphered. So when you come to think about that, what someone is doing whenever is being picked up by that someone's mobile device and shared with the marketing research company that recruited him to this panel. This is kind of a second screen experience that you may have come to be more aware as to recently. And it allows, as a starter, the ability to passively collect data as to exposure, and also allow, whenever that will be desired, the ability to interact or engage. It becomes really easy now for marketing research companies to engage with new panel members they want to recruit to their panels, because they just get a text asking them to join. If they agree, they press it, they go to the Play Store or wherever, they get this meter, which is basically an app that then from there on runs on their mobile device. And the nice thing is, they don't need to do anymore anything. They don't need to log in or log out. They don't need to fill diaries. They're not questioned as to their behavior and if they forgot or not to do that. As opposed to kind of a Shazam thing, because give and take, it's similar in the way it acts. It works all the time. And nobody needs to really remember that it's actually there. So whether that would be on my tablet, just allow the tablet to flip again. So it runs in the background in tablet, and it doesn't ask me to start the app. When I open up my device, it comes up automatically. It runs in the background, so I forget about that. And I'm collected as to my true behavior because I'm not aware anymore after a short while as to me being part of this panel. That's a major thing. So we allow the panelist to stop it for a while if he wants to have it paused for 2 minutes or even to the day after, and then it resumes, so nobody actually quits. For going into a more engaging experience, we allow also interfaces which allow interfacing with this consumer, asking something about something he was exposed to, and that could include a survey, it could include taking a photo or a video, and it immediately is being transmitted. No need for no asking if this person, or not knowing if that person was exposed. We collect all kind of additional data. We mainly collect this as kind of what we call compliance stream, just to make sure that this guy is actually using the device and it's not placed on the shelf and he goes out and doing whatever he likes. We'll save you the clips. Thanks.
Thank you all for staying. We saved the best for last because this panel, we're actually going to be talking about us, the digital consumer. We're all digital consumers. How many of you have 2 open screens right now? How many have 3? Okay, see, just think about it, we're all digital consumers. Before Natalie starts speaking, I want to thank again everyone, our speakers, our guests, IDC staff, our moderator Levi Shapiro, and again, special thanks to Kfir Unger and his team who produced this and helped everything run so smoothly today, so thank you everyone. So we're going to start with Natalie Lacey, who's going to talk about our 3-screen behavior.
Great. Well, it's hopefully you can hear me okay. Okay, yeah. It's a good follow-up to Omri's presentation because I work for Ipsos, which is one of the market research companies that uses the technology very similar or the technology that Omri discussed. And I'm going to show you a little bit about that today. So just a little bit about Ipsos, and I don't have actually a formal slide about this. We are the 2nd largest market research company in the world. We are in 84 countries, have about 16,000 employees, and I specifically work in a group called Media, Content, and Technology. So for years, we did a lot of audience measurement work, some of the things that you've heard about today, and a few years ago, we realized that doing audience measurement without understanding how people are using all of the technology platforms that they have access to was no longer going to be effective. So our goal here is to look at how people are interacting with media and content really across all of the platforms. So you've heard a lot today about the screens. And I just want to share with you a little bit about how we view the screens, and specifically the fact that all screens are not created equal. So we can talk about the need to distribute content, distribute media across the screens. But in fact, what we call the screens is really what we interpret as platforms for purpose. And you'll see here we've given each of the screens a little bit of a persona. So the TV is kind of the everyman. It is a platform that you don't really engage with. It's one we're very familiar with. And that compares to the PC, which we call the sage, the owl. And it's really kind of a, more of a learning tool, something we use for productivity. And the relationship that consumers have with the PC is very different than the one they have with their mobile device, which we have, as you can see here, called the lover, something you take to bed with you have with you all the time, and you stay very closely engaged with. Finally, the tablet, we have deemed the persona of the wizard. And this is because when people talk about the tablet, they really discuss it as enabling some sort of competence or really fulfilling a need that they don't get from the other platforms. Also, in terms of how we engage with content, all content grazing and the way in which we interact with content is not the same. And we've created really 4 different methods that I just want to describe for you here in terms of how we engage and look at content. So while the screens are not equal, neither is the way that we actually access, use, or in fact participate with each of the content mechanisms. So there's content grazing. You know, I may go smartphone to tablet, but I'm doing different things as I go across those different platforms. And that's quite different from what we call investigative spider webbing, when I'm actually looking for the same thing but across different platforms. And that then extends to what we'll call social spider webbing, in which we're doing simultaneous platform use and really creating more of a social experience across those platforms. And finally, the fourth method of content engagement is one which we call quantum, or essentially when you're moving from platform to platform in a more sequential way. So I think what's really key is, as you know, we've looked at the presentations and we consider the way people are engaging, the fact that all platforms are not equal and the way in which we engage with content is not equal is very critical to the way in which we distribute, monetize, and indeed access content ourselves. Some of our clients have used this in a very operational way. We do a lot of work on the journey and how people actually move then between both the content and the platform, and how that movement across the content and the platform can really create the right points in which brands should engage with the consumer. So in fact, if I have a TV advertisement, which we know is more of what we call a sit-back mechanism, and what is the right message for TV versus the tablet, which is, as I said, more of a content engagement, and the expectation of what I get on a tablet is very different. So we're helping our clients look at not only the consumer, but the channel and the device combination, which delivers the optimal message across the right platform. And all of this really leads to then a need for social technology. So it's a way in which not only are you creating a brand experience, but you're enabling the consumer to really create the context in which they will both absorb and really create the more effective message on the part of the brands in which we work with. And I just want to actually wrap up, and hopefully the last few minutes, with a case study of how we've learned about the platforms, specifically in a media and use context. And I'm glad to see that my Google colleague will be speaking after me. Some of this is actually done, and this work specifically was done in concert with Google and was released in the UK just a few months ago. But I just want to talk to you a little bit about how people are engaging with the three platforms. And in this case, and what's really important, I think, in terms of where research is going, is it wasn't sufficient just to use one piece. Understanding the blogs and the qualitative context, the diaries, and understanding what consumers are telling us they're doing was very interesting when we compared to what we'll call passive technology and the amount that we were collecting from the device and what people were doing. So let's just look at a few of the findings. First of all, and this is really critical, all of this is for naught if you can't analyze the massive data that comes from this. So there's a lot of time spent on the technology. Where we're spending a lot of effort right now is actually the processing of the output. What is the really key insight? Because collecting, as you can see here, 30,000 online sessions is not sufficient if you don't have a way in which you can process that and actually pull an insight that's going to make a difference. So a lot of this is some things you'll already know, but just wanted to highlight, yes, they're always online, we know that, but what's interesting is it's really coming from smartphone, followed by tablet, followed by PC, if we look at a 30-day period. Really interesting point about tablets. What are they doing? Are they cannibalizing other platforms, or are they actually creating more use? In fact, we find tablets actually add an additional almost 2 hours to engagement when we compare to the other platforms. This is actually pure passive measurement, so this is not what people are telling us. This is what we're able to look at in terms of the engagement that people have with their device online. A lot of things about PC being online, mobile being out of home, in fact, that's actually not true. Mobile devices are actually used in home more than the PC is. So if we actually look where people are and how they're using the devices, 55% of use in home comes from mobile devices versus 45% for the PC. Of course, this is a well-known fact, people using different devices while watching TV. But what's interesting here is which device are they using? And I showed you earlier a little bit about how they're interacting with the content. And when they're watching TV, and I have a lot more information on this. So you can see here that it's really through the different types of device, but not just the mobile, not just the tablet, a combination of the three. And finally, just in terms of commerce, there's a belief that people tend to kind of do that through their PC. In fact, that's not also true. We find that the majority of e-commerce is actually done through the mobile device, either a smartphone or tablet, and done at home. So while the PC, again, has a specific use, the mobile devices used at home are playing a very important role, not only in terms of content access, but also in terms of commerce. Finally, we're able to actually map, and you can see here, this is our attempt at a data visualization, so I'll almost conclude with this. Each circle here represents a person. Each little blip records the use of either a tablet in yellow, the smartphone in blue, or the PC in green. And you can see actually how people are using their device through the day. And if I was able to move, I could show you. But you can see that where we have the morning little text blurb, it's highly blue. People are using their mobile in the morning, perhaps planning for the day, perhaps checking on some information. Then as you see, the green tends to pick up in the evening when people are downloading. And we saw earlier the importance of Netflix traffic being in the evening. And you can see here the PC being actually primarily used in the evenings. And this is all through a passive measurement tool. So again, if you think about what that means and the implications for how you're distributing content and how people are accessing it, we're able to actually track fully on a respondent basis and aggregate that in a fully passive way. So finally, in terms of some of the key learnings, one of the key things about this study was, while it's interesting to collect the passive data, the attitudinal bits were also very important to tell us why. And I didn't show some of that here, but why are they using a tablet? What are some of the experiences and the engagement that they expect to get out of that devices? We can also know that people are extremely inaccurate when they report what they're doing. We know that, and again, I didn't show some of it here, but the actual time spent online differs by about 4 times between what they tell us and what the passive data actually tells us. That's not to say, though, that everything was done, in full completion here. There's lots of things, and one of the key learnings is what you would do differently. Clearly, we'd like to talk a little bit more about screens. Obviously, we want to link the device behavior to the survey responses, and of course, the wearable devices changing everything. And on the 1-minute mark, I finish with my last slide. So I just want to conclude with to say that, of course, as we all know, consumers are not created equal, but also we are able to look at the different implications for that and what it means in terms of distribution of content, the use of the platforms, and really get a full picture of how that engagement varies by both device and the messages and content that's being distributed. So finally, that's the end, and I'm going to turn it over, I think, over to Google to tell us a little bit more about the consumer. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Natalie. And as Robin, you set up, Natalie talked about the large use of mobile in-home. Research that was done for NBC by John Carey actually called it the marriage saver, because 2 people can actually be together in the same room and watch 2 different shows and not argue about the remote control. So just think about that as an advantage for a mobile device. If that doesn't work,
Hi, so my name's Robin Shulman. I lead the area of strategy and business research for Google in Israel, Sub-Saharan Africa, and Greece. And I'm going to talk to you today about a couple of researchers that we've been involved in. The first that looks at media consumption, and specifically at the media consumption here in Israel. The second looks at the consumer's commerce activity on the web. And that is actually an international comparison, but here again I focus specifically on Israel and how Israel compares to other countries. So let's take a look at it. So the first one, as I said, is Israelis' media consumption. What do we talk about here? We talk about what medias we use, how much we use them, how we use them, where we use them, and again, the issue of parallel usage. I'll also talk about that slightly, again, focusing on Israel. So this is a slide we actually presented about 1.5 years ago, which showed that the average Israeli consumes about half of this, or let's put it this way, about half of the average Israeli's media consumption is online. So the amount of time on average spent by Israelis on various different medias. About half of that was online. About 29% was TV, radio, press, etc. When we came to redo this research, we thought this can't possibly change in an enormous way, but still we wanted to track how things looked, so we decided we should do this again. We did it again a few months ago. It was actually it was in the marker a few days ago, and what we got was this. The online portion of Israelis' media consumption had actually grown to 58% of our total media consumption. That includes all the different online devices, so the PC, the cell phone, and the tablet. And the growth had actually come from, not surprisingly, the cell phone and the tablet, which now constitute 22% of our media consumption. If we compare for a moment, and this is kind of interesting, our consumption of media, that's here on the left, that's there on the, well, your right. So the consumption of media, so that's the 58% that we spoke about. The 17% is just mobile, 22% is mobile plus tablet. And if we compare that for a moment to the advertising budgets here in Israel, then clearly there's an opportunity, there's a disparity which indicates an opportunity. The online in general, but especially if we look at mobile, which currently constitutes approximately 2% of Israeli advertising budgets. There are no definite numbers on mobile, but that's the best I could find out there. Moving on, so again, the comparison of 2011 to 2013, which are the, what's going up, what's going down. Basically, everything is going down except for tablet and cell phone. So computer, laptops, regular desktop computers are actually went down slightly from 2011 to, or end of 2011 to beginning of 2013. The interesting thing about cell phones, again, is that we use them throughout the day. Unlike other media that have sort of peaks and troughs, especially TV, prime time is all about the TV peak. Cell phone is the most stable media that we consume throughout the day. You can see how the 1.5 hours of cell phone that we consume throughout the day is spread across the different portions. Now then, by the way, when I say cell phone, I'm not talking about when we make calls, I'm not talking about SMS, I'm talking about everything that requires online on our cell phones. This is an interesting point when we think about the future. So screens, and here I'm talking about all screens, including TV. Screens constitute 83% of our media consumption. 5 minutes, okay. When we think about the future, all these screens, and the number of screens are growing, new screens are being invented every day. Screens are the future of how we consume media. It is moving from paper to screens. Online video. So video consumption constitutes about 200 minutes per day of media consumption. 1/3 of that, and this surprised even me, 1/3 of our media consumption is online, video consumption, yeah. 200 minutes of video consumption per day. 1/3 of that video consumption is online video consumption. So online video is totally mainstream nowadays. It's not that a small portion of people do it. And an interesting point is also that a very large portion of those 65 minutes a day of online video is not, the 1 or 2 minute clips of a cat on a skateboard. It's 15 plus minutes. So people watching TV content on online video. And again, we were already talking about parallel consumption, so admittedly the methodologies are slightly different, but the numbers we saw for Israel of people stating that they perform parallel consumption are very, very high. So approximately 80% of TV viewers stated that they use another screen in parallel on a given day. So that's it for media consumption. I want to quickly move on to consumer commerce behavior. So this is about how we buy things and how that touches on our online activity. Yeah, it looks like a kind of crazy graph, but let's focus on on what we can see here. So the different colors are different countries. Yellow is Israel. The other countries are all big, serious online countries. So UK, France, Germany, Italy, and USA. What we can see is that the subject here is the percent of purchasers who researched online before purchasing. So a very high proportion of people research online before they purchase. They may purchase online, they may purchase offline, but they perform the research beforehand online. And here we see that Israelis in many different categories, so travel, technology, personal appliances, cinema tickets, lead the way. We Israelis are one of the most active online researchers globally. That said, there are categories where we are actually way behind, simply because I think the amount of information accessible in Israel about these categories is relatively weak. Books, toys, clothing, and accessories, there Israelis are way behind other countries. So Israel, as I said, is the yellow line. You can see the yellow is highest in these categories, lowest in those categories. Next, let's talk about mobile research. So whereas on regular online research, we saw that Israelis sometimes led the pack, sometimes were way behind, in mobile research, Israelis they simply love doing it, okay? Israelis are way ahead in any category I looked at in the subject of mobile phone research prior to purchasing. We love our mobile phones even more than people in other countries. Now let's talk about, okay, this is also connected to mobile phones. 1 minute, fine, no problem. So another area, now and this doesn't surprise me, where Israelis are leading the pack, so to speak. So this is when you go into the store, you stand in front of the vendor comes up to you, asks you, can I help you? You said, no, I'm checking on my mobile phone to check the prices here. Yeah, no, you're too expensive. I'm going to go across the street, they're much cheaper there. So Israelis do that more than anybody else. And finally, one area that we are definitely not leading the pack, and that is actual online purchasing. So we are researching online, but we are not so much purchasing online. That said, there are categories where Israelis actually lead the pack in online purchasing. So cinema tickets, for example, is one area that Israelis purchase online far more than in other countries. That said, in travel, books, technology, domestic appliances, toys, clothing, accessories, we are lagging way behind in online purchasing. I think what this tells us is that Israelis are prepared to purchase online. There is no inherent issue that Israelis say, I'm afraid of online purchasing, I don't want to do it. There is a problem with and again, this is just my personal opinion, but there is a problem with the vendor offering in the area of online purchasing, which is driving Israelis, if the offering isn't there, then we're not doing it. But we are prepared to do it. We are online, we're researching online, and where the offering is there, we're prepared to purchase online. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robin. I think it's always interesting to see how a culture behaves online and offline if it's in the same thing. So I learned a lot of new things about Israelis online, which I didn't know. I would like these last three presentations, Omri and Robin and Natalie talked about how we actually work today online, what we do today in a day-to-day life. The next two presentations are talking a little bit about the future, how we're going to be measured and what we will look like in the future. So I'd like to invite Professor Natalie Intrator from Tel Aviv University, who is going to tell us how we can read our minds, basically.
So I'm here to talk about your brain and what it is that we can read from your brain. Unfortunately, a lot of what I'm going to say is not conventional, so I need to first present my credentials so that you'll believe me that I'm familiar with what the current studies on brain is. So here's kind of a formal presentation. I've been researching the brain for about 20 years. I've been modeling the brain for quite a long time and has the capability. I understood that some people came to hear me talk about fMRI or EEG and fMRI, which is a work that I'm doing. I'm mostly interested in the analysis of post-trauma, the analysis of cognition, attention, etc. But today I'm going to talk about something else, a single electrode. In a more humoristic way of presenting myself, my expertise is signal processing, and so I was pushed to analyze the signal processing capabilities of brains, and these are 4 biosonar animals. Each one of them has an amazing signal processing capability, much better than what we have. To name the few, the bat, the number of neurons is smaller than the number of transistors in a Pentium. The energy consumption is a few millworms a day. And what this sonar bat is doing in parallel, in real time, even if we take 2 Cray supercomputers or whatever the supercomputer of today is, and connect them to an energy facility, we cannot do what they do in terms of accuracy, etc. The dolphin is much better, has an ultrasound that's at least about 100 times more accurate than our own ultrasound and sonar. The mole rat is an amazing animal where the visual cortex is being invaded by the auditory cortex and it's navigating under the ground with infrasound. And do you have any idea why I put the elephants here? So the elephants have seismic sensors in their legs. They can detect earthquakes, and they communicate between elephants up to a distance of about 5 kilometers through their legs. So if one elephant is in the forest and there's fire, an elephant 5 kilometers away will start running away. So that's kind of what I'm really doing. So I'm a little bit odd here, but maybe we'll see why I'm here. So trying to look at your brain, this is the way we still analyze the brain in 2013. Quite not pleasant, isn't it? And you cannot see a consumer walking with this in a shopping mall, correct? But this is the way that I would like to analyze the brain. There's a huge gap between this, and this is where I am, trying to connect between these two, namely, obtain as much information as we can obtain from these huge number of electrodes using only one electrode. So why did I present my credentials? Because for about 90 years we are familiar with EEG from the late 20s of the previous century. And so everybody knows that what I'm trying to do cannot be done. And usually when I give a longer talk, I explain exactly why people believe it cannot be done, just so that people will understand that I know the difficulties that I'm dealing with. But we'll skip that. And just to kind of suggest what it is that I'm trying to do, I'm actually going to use a slide of Scott McCaig, who is one of the producers of the EEG lab, which is the classical EEG signal processing used in MATLAB. And so what I'm trying to create is a very sophisticated telescope so that I can look at different regions in the brain even if I'm very far from those regions of the brain. So instead of having to fly there, I'm just trying to generate, using advanced signal processing, sophisticated telescopes that can take me everywhere in the brain. So here's my son, who is cannot be playing any computer game for the last 2 years without keeping this on his head. So he's been playing a lot, I can assure you. So that's what we want to do. We want to record from the frontal part of the brain. Again, people tell you that the frontal part of the brain is nice, but not sufficiently useful for what you want to achieve. That's all okay. And this is the technology that I'm actually shooting for. Someone asked me about sensors. This is a biomedical skin that is now being tested. And if you look at it, it's a little tattoo on your forehead. So you can imagine that this is something that people will be going with in very few years. To look at it from close view, it has ECG, it has basically voltage sensors, so one can use ECG or EEG or EMG on that sensor. It attaches to the skin so you really don't feel it, and you can walk with it for days. There's an antenna here, there's strain gauges, everything that you can really think of. It's being developed for military purposes, but as you know, all things that are developed either for military purposes or pornographic purposes eventually reach good science, so it's good. Okay, so the technology is here, and this is really what I'm shooting for. And what takes, oops, again, not 10 minutes, 4 hours. Okay, these 4 hours are too short here. Okay, so to take us from here to what I'm shooting for, we need advanced signal processing. I'm not going to get into those details, so let's just look at some pictures to understand what we are looking at. Okay? So this is time. This is like, 40 minutes of time. This is a huge number of what I would call generalized filters that one can extract, or I can extract, from this single electrode. So if you're familiar with the current literature, Berger devised those filters in the 1920s, about 8 filters, and everyone still in 2013 is writing papers and talking about alpha going up, beta going down, gamma changing between the 2 hemispheres. So about really 8 filters. Those 8 filters are somewhere embedded in this large set of filters, which are also sorted in a certain way to adhere some mathematical constraints. So what we see here now is a lot of filters, over 120 of them, where blue represents less activity and red represents more activity. And this is my son playing one of his computer games. So this is kind of the beginning, and here there's a portion of listening to a story. We'll see that this listening actually repeats itself a few times and then starts playing again. You may see some kind of mirror behavior on top. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it breaks. And this is the kind of pictures we are going to look at now. Here is him again playing against the computer. Here playing against another opponent on the internet. You see again this part of listening to a story and then playing. It changes slightly compared to playing just next to the computer. So Adi mentioned before cognitive, emotional, and behavioral. I'll try to persuade you that we are getting there. This is an e-learning task, 7 different people, or kind of 6.5, performing an e-learning task which requires some kind of listening at the beginning, then answering a simple set of questions, and answering a slightly more advanced set of questions. So this is person number 1, person number 2, person number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, and half of number 7 because they're... You're not serious. Okay, so I'll be very fast. Okay. So this recording was stopped. You see two people that look exactly the same, correct? This one and this one. That's a mother and a son performing the same task. So, and you can see the listening. So let's just cover two more pictures because they are fun. This is the e-learning that we looked at. What is this? This is meditation. Two people doing meditation. You can see something completely different, really shutting off and just staying at a very certain level, which we'll see coming back soon. This is another person doing meditation, and right afterwards, listening to music. Listening again is repeating itself even when listening to music. Emotions, here are three movies. A frightening movie, a movie that starts nice and develops badly, a movie that starts bad and develops nicely. And you can see these two peaks where there's a lot of happiness in the movie. You can see that very, very easily on the pictures. Last but not least, sleeping. You can see that this reminds you of the meditation portion, dreaming, and deep sleep. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah, questions later. Thank you very much. And I'm going to call Dr. Oren Zuckerman. We heard a little bit about the future and even that little patch. Oren is going to tell us where it's going, and I'd love to know when we're actually going to have that chip inserted in us and walk around with it.
Gali. So I'll share with you, my name is Oren Zuckerman, as Gali mentioned. I'm the head of the interactive communication specialty here at IDC School of Communications. I'm going to share with you a framework that my students in the audience already know pretty well. It's a framework that was originally created in 1990 by Mark Weiser, one of the most amazing researchers in HCI, which predicted a lot of things and unfortunately is not living anymore and not with us to experience the future that he predicted. And he did all this work at Xerox PARC, one of the most amazing labs that created a lot of the technologies that we use today. He asked us to start to look at the future as a future of 4 eras in which people interact with computers. So the focus is very much not on the technology itself, but on the human aspect and how we as humans interact with technology. So the first era during the 60s was the mainframe era. So we can look at it as one computer per many users, okay? Some of us lived through this era, the younger ones didn't really. So jumping 20 years ahead to the 80s, so in the 80s we started what's called the personal computer era. All of the people in the audience, including the young ones, experienced this era, which is called one computer per person. I would think we should call it one computer per family, because we had a computer per household and all of us really interacted with this personal computer together. 20 years after, 2000, so we get into the mobility era. That's the era that we're in right now, although we're already 2013. We're still in the area that was projected back then, mobility era, not the mobile phone, which is, let's say, one device per person, but mobility as mobile devices in general. And you can see the terminology that was very smartly termed, which is several computers per person. Several computers per person is not 2 and not 3, but not 20. Okay, and I think we're definitely in this era right now. We're just beginning it. We all have 2, 3, 4 devices. Very soon, as we saw in the previous presentations before me, as a lot of people in the field of human-computer interaction predict, we're going to have a few devices at home for many different purposes. So we're going to have devices in the kitchen, devices in the living room, devices in the bedroom, devices on the go, devices in the car. So instead of having the one, what's called black box device that helps us really do all of our digital interaction, which the mobile phone was thought to be this device, we in the research field believe that it's not going to be the case. We're going to have several devices that we're interacting with. So this era that we're in right now brings up a lot of very interesting questions. In the previous speakers before me talked about some of them, about measuring our interactive behavior, our digital consumption in different platforms. but it's also a lot about managing our digital identity and what does it mean when I log into one device versus the other. So also we experience it right now from cloud connectivity to digital devices and how we manage our connectivity online. Now, most of the people today, including entrepreneurs and including venture capitals, believe that the mobile phone is going to continue to be our digital profile management system. We're going to, hook on to different devices. So our mobile device is going to be the device that's going to sync us, and also later on to physical devices. I'm not so sure, and that's part of the further future, which is hard to predict. When we look at Mark Weiser's prediction and what he thought about 20 years after, which was 2020 back then. So let's ignore the picture for a second. When we look at the era, it's called the ubiquity area. Again, in the field of HCI, of research of interaction, we call it ubiquitous computing. And the era is termed as thousands of computers per user. Okay, and again, it's very smartly termed. It's not, from several, we can go to tens or hundreds. No, it's thousands of computers per person, which is overwhelming. And that's what we believe the areas that we're going to get to. People predicted it to be 2020. I think it's going to be a little further away, but who knows? Everything is progressing really quickly, so we'll see. Now, it was very hard to think how to predict it. So some of the people in the field choose this specific image, which all of us know right now, of the field that's called already NUI. NUI, N-U-I, for Natural User Interfaces, that is meant to allow us to interact using human gestures, body gestures, to interact with the physical world. But just to explain a little more about this field, we're not sure that NUI, or natural interaction in this form, is going to be the dominant interaction way that we're going to use. Nobody really knows, and I'll share with you a few different assumptions. What we do know is that computers are going to be embedded in every aspect of our lives. It's going to be in physical artifacts around us, so it's going to be the chairs and the carpets and the walls. It's going to be in the mobile things around us, the cars, and of course in our home environment, in every little things. The way to look at it, to understand it a little better, is not to imagine screens anymore. And when we think about computers, to think about technology and not computers specifically. Because when we say computer today, we start to imagine a screen and a keyboard or a touch interface, but technology can be much, much more than that. So thinking just the enabling technology of the microchip, and where the microchip might be, we just saw in the previous presentation before me that it can become as thin and flexible as a tattoo. So start to imagine a lot of technology around us, and the big question is, how are we going to interact with it? In this case, the field of research of HCI start to diverge, and people take different camps. I am part of the camp that believes the physical interaction is critical to human development, that we evolved in an evolution of many, many years, as creatures that love interaction with the physical world. We have our senses, we have 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 2 hands, and we do a very good job in interacting with them. We love to touch, we love to express ourselves in different ways. That's why I think that the physical world matters. And when we look at the different interaction paradigms for the future, I like to look at it in that sense, and I want to share this diagram with you for a second. So when we look at the most left side, GUI, what's called graphical user interface, is a classic interaction paradigm that involves a screen, a keyboard, and a mouse. It was also invented in Xerox PARC by Ellen Kay and a group of researchers over there. And it became a very successful interaction paradigm. We're all using it for many, many years. It's very effective, it's very efficient. We all do a lot of work using it for our laptops, Windows operating system, and the touch operating system that we're starting to use right now since 2007, and the iPod and the iPad and the iPhone and the iPad and the devices, brings us a little further to the right, to the interaction paradigms. It's called NUI, natural user interface. So why is it more natural? Because we use our body. Touch is more natural than the mouse and the keyboard, which is a little more distant. In NUI, I want you to look at NUI as 2 different parts. One is 2D NUI and one is 3D NUI. So 2D NUI is really to touch the screen, what we do today. It's really a very poor term to call it touch, because it's very far from what touch really is. We're just touching a glass and moving our finger, in 2 directions. But that's what we have in the tablet devices of today. When you look at touch in 3 dimensions, we have the Kinect, the Wii, other devices that allows us to do really human gestures. So that's definitely a direction we're seeing growing and growing. Also, in mobile devices, there are already a lot of technologies that allow us to do, natural gestures in front of the phone's camera and interact with the phone in that sense. So right now in this area, which is a NUI and the arrow to the left to GUI, we have a NUI interface, but we really control a GUI system. Okay, so if I play the Kinect, what do I have? It's like a regular video games, right? I just control it with my body. So it's still a GUI paradigm using a NUI interaction. One of the future interaction paradigms that we predict that will grow is what's called TUI. TUI is for tangible user interfaces. So tangible means that we're going to start to have more and more digital interactions that has a tangible part. It's going to have material in it. People also look right now as a more further interaction paradigm. It's called DMUI, which is material user interface, to really look at fabrics, to look at wearable, not as just putting screens or little devices on us, but really think about manipulating material which is both physical and digital at the same time. What we're going to start to see in the near, next few years is NUI control over TUI devices. So we can start to use our body and natural interaction into physical devices. So think about surfaces that can shake themselves a little, think about robotic creations that are tangible and physical, and when you can interact with them in a very natural way. And then later on, hopefully, we're going to start to really have more material interaction, and in that sense, in a way, go back in time and start to, go back to the eras that we feel material and interact not only with glass, but really interact with much more organic materials and something that's much more human and much more appropriate, I think, for, human interaction using technology. So that's basically a summary of what I wanted to share with you. I hope it wasn't too, theoretical and academic. I think it's a really exciting era. I think right now a lot of the things that we, especially in these lectures before me, it was amazing to see all the research that's actively done on the, free screen and four screen and multiple platforms. We believe that, looking further, the amount of devices is going to be so immense that the way to interact with them has to really go back to our roots of more human interaction with technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I invite our panel to come forward? Can you stay? Yeah, please. I also want to know, isn't that the nephews of Donald Duck? Huey, Dewey, Louie, Gooey. So get ready for your questions. Gali is going to moderate a discussion, and we're going to save time for a question or two from the audience. And I'm going to wander around and do the Oprah again, but I'll give this, would you like this one?
I just want to ask the panel members first one general question, then we're going to open up to 2 or 3 of your questions, maybe one final remark, and we'll all go home because it's getting late. So we heard many things about how you measure consumers, what they're doing today, but if I would ask you, what is the one thing you would like us to understand about the consumer, the digital consumer today? It could be a misconception, it could be a characteristic. What is the one thing, because people say the digital consumer, but many people don't understand what that means. Natalie, why don't you start? Ladies first.
I think the one thing is that, first of all, while there are differences across country and by platform, there's remarkable consistency around the world in terms of how we're engaging with content and the expectations and the way in which we're engaging. And I think it's really interesting, potentially, when we do work in 50 countries, to see, why there are some really important differences, how the engagement with content and the expectations are both demanding a lot from those that are content producers, but also the importance of context in which you deliver and accept that message is really critical. So, consumers, it's not one for all. There is such a diversity, but that diversity is actually, if that makes sense, the diversity is consistent in a lot of the markets in which we really look at the way in which consumers are interacting. So it's a fascinating time to be here and to investigate some of this and really understand better, as some of the other panelists have said, to really get at the heart of what people are doing and what their expectations are.
So digital as a cultural equalizer, sort of.
So I believe that technology, sensors, data mining, internet is actually producing much more information about the consumers in real time. So in the future we'll be able to understand the needs, the desires, the immediate desires of a consumer and present to that consumer, it may be via Google Glass or something like this, present exactly what that consumer wants right now. And in fact, consumers will benefit from that because that will save them time. Instead of looking at the wrong messages, the wrong advertisements, etc., they'll see exactly what they want and will appreciate that.
If there's one thing that I would like to say about the digital consumer, that is that he or she does not exist. There's no such thing as a digital consumer today, and definitely not in the future. The digital world and the, so to speak, real world are converging at such a pace that, I mean, if I am, as I gave the example of the guy who stands in the shop and compares prices on his mobile phone. Is that a consumer, offline consumer, or is that a digital consumer? And when you think about stuff like Google Glass that you just mentioned, then it becomes even more so. I mean, I'm getting, if Google Glass prompts me on the name of the person I'm talking to, is that an offline interaction or is that an online interaction? The concept no longer exists, and the fact that that concept no longer exists should permeate into the thinking of everybody. I mean, of businesses. When businesses think about their advertising, for example, they often think about online advertising and offline advertising. There's no such thing. They have to think about it all as one big a converged concept, and that's the way that they are going to get the most out of their holistic approach to business.
I would say that the consumer or digital consumer is both empowered and overwhelmed. So I think we're all really empowered by this era. We can do things that we could never do before. We can communicate with so many people at once. But at the same time, we're overwhelmed. And I think it's both for the older and younger generation. It's not only for people that lived through the old times that feel that they are overwhelmed. I see it everywhere with young people as well. And I think that we have a responsibility, all of us, as a developer, designers, content creators, researcher of this area to try and think where do we want to lead it, because we influence.
It's a lot of responsibility, but I think it's true. Yeah, we have a question.
Hi, I'm Nelly Shushan. I wanted to ask you, to all of you, if you can tell us more about the purchasing behavior. For instance, do we know the emotional impact of purchasing, and do we know if there are ways to smooth the stress of the buyer? Do we know on which devices they tend to buy more, and at what time of the day?
So, I mean, just regarding the emotional aspects, I don't really have any insights, but regarding devices, what I can say is that the device that seems to put people in into the mind of purchasing more than any other device appears to be the tablet. So among tablet holders appear to be most responsive to purchasing stimulus, possibly because typically tablet is actually a sit-back at-home experience, and it's a relatively kind of laid-back, calm experience, which I think puts people into a purchasing frame of mind.
So I mentioned that I'm interested in post-trauma and attention, etc., everything, but it turns out that the advertisement world is very interested in what I'm doing. And this is why I presented the movie, to kind of show emotions. And I think that what you're asking is going to be an intense area of research in the near future to better understand the attentions, the change in attention as a result of an advertisement and the desire right now to purchase A, B, or C so as to respond best to the customer. It's obvious that this is where we're going to.
So we have looked obviously at what time of day and the devices, so happy to share what we have with you on that. What we also know is that if people have a frustrating experience, they will abort very quickly. So I think the average time to end is less than 30 seconds, right? If you run into issues, it's actually a very short period of time that people will actually spend to try and work through an e-commerce situation. So there's you can see the results of a frustration, which is an end of purchase. And I'm not sure the number is not on the top of my head, but it's something like over 50% of attempted purchases don't go through. So it's something along those lines. You might know better than I, but there's clearly a lot of facilitation that's needed to happen, and you talk about the mobile wallet or the ease of purchasing. So a lot is about facilitation of the process and the ease in which people can actually then complete at the moment. So the other thing, of course, we're doing, and I talked a little bit about it, is the journey. So to what extent does what I've been to 2 sites ago or 3 sites ago influence my decision to then make a purchase? And that's very different with a short-term decision like cinema tickets versus a longer term like a TV. So we're able to sort of analyze like by type of purchase, the type of length of time that people will research, which is quite different by what you're talking about in terms of a purchase decision. So
We have another question over there?
Yeah, just a comment, or maybe, and if you'd like to respond, that's great. I think today we've heard a lot of numbers about associations of behavior with devices, et cetera, and this is all very interesting. And as we all know, going from just to look at numbers and associations to conclusions is always a leap. So I just want to point out 2 things I heard a few minutes ago. One is that it looks like in Israel, the highest spike for online purchases occurs for movie purchases, but then other things are not there, blah, blah, blah. It may not be that it may be that the individuals who are buying lots of movie tickets, and there may be a very small number, are not exemplary of Israelis at large. So drawing those kinds of conclusions that, yes, Israelis like to do this and Israelis don't do that, it just may be that certain segments. And likewise, I think there was a comment a few minutes ago about people who who have tablets are more predisposed to a certain type of behavior. Again, tablets are relatively new. It may be, of all the different kinds of screens, it may be that the people who have, the 20 or 30% of the people who have run out and bought the tablets, i.e. the early adopters, are not exemplary of the people who will have tablets 5 years from now, who may be a lot more. So,
Sample size.
I'll just react to each of those. Regarding the Israelis and the cinema tickets, I mean, I just brought a subset of the various different categories. So, and from several other researchers that I've actually seen, most Israelis do not have an inherent problem with online purchasing. So the fact that cinema tickets is just one example of that. Regarding tablets, you may well be correct. I don't know.
I think this is the last question from the audience.
Last question up here. Great.
Oh my goodness, I'm last. Hi, my name is Philippa Kowalski, and I come from the old world of cinema and television. And I'm sitting here in front of such incredible speakers. I see your CVs, I see what you're doing. There's Google, there's serious academic people, and I get feeling worse and worse and worse, because what about, it sounds so intrusive what you're suggesting, and I actually think wasting my time searching for something could be nice, and I don't want the supermarket to know what I want to buy and give me coupons that suit my previous purchase, because maybe next time I don't want to buy the same cereals, and I don't want everyone to know what I want before I know what I wanted. And I understand a lot of people are different, and I understand the commerce need for it, but if you could just look into the future for a minute with me and think of this issue, I'd appreciate that.
A great question, and it's a topic I can also, just on Wednesday evening we have a discussion exactly about this here also in another event, so you're invited. I think that I totally share your view. I think that we're getting into a transitional era right now when technology is going to become active, proactive. So we call it proactive technology or context-based technology, and when you talk to companies like Google or Microsoft, they call about suggestion systems instead of calling it proactive computing. But it is a very dramatic area in our relationship with technology that until now we searched, we looked for a video, we initiated the activity. And the shift is going to be for a technology that suggests for us and says, why don't you buy this? We learned your patterns. We think that this book is more interesting for you than another. And we're going to see more and more and more out of that. And that's a big difference, and people would have to be much more aware of when they're really making the decision versus the technology is making the decision for them. Yeah, it's all the questions are really good. I don't think it's funny, or I don't think I think it's the right question. It's an evolutionary moment in the relationship between people and technology. It's going to take many years to see where it's going to evolve, and some people are very optimistic about it, and they say that we're going to evolve and we're getting much, much more sophisticated as people with our skills of making decisions and learning how to use technology to really make more informed decisions and communicate with the people we love and waste less time on chores and errands that we hate and spend more time on being with the people we love. And some other people feel that we invest more and more time in the technology itself versus with the people we love. So I think it's a very, deep and open question, which I don't think we can answer, but that's my view.
So,
can I just...
No, I just want to follow this. We're going to continue this because you basically stole two of my questions. One, what's going to happen to our brain? And second, in the future, is our lives, and this is in continuation to your question, us as consumers, is it going to be better or worse for us? So if you can just summarize that, and we'll conclude with that.
Okay, so first I'd just like to react to the original question. And I think there are two key words here from sort of my perspective or Google perspective, and that is transparency and choice. So in the unwritten or sometimes written contract between or agreement between us and the consumer and the service provider. Service provider is giving us something. We are, in order to enable that service, we are sharing certain information with it, with the service provider. The Google philosophy is that the user the service provider must be 100% transparent about all the information it is gathering about the user, must enable the user at any time to access that information, know what is being gathered about him or her, and be able to decide whether they are prepared to share that information or not prepared to share that information. Now then, if I want my phone to tell me if I'm going to be late for a meeting, I have to let it know where I am and when I've got a meeting. If it doesn't know when I am, it's not going to know how long beforehand I have to leave for that meeting. Now, I can decide I don't want it to give me that information. I am perfectly able to open a notebook, a physical notebook, right, with things written down on it, and see when my next meeting is, work out that it'll take me an hour to get there, and get in the car and go there. On the other hand, I may want my phone to tell me, hey, Robin, in an hour's time, you've got a meeting in Haifa, leave now. If I want that information, I have to share that information with my computer or with with the service provider. And some people will choose to do so. Some people will choose to not to do so. Regarding the future, will it be better for the consumer? I think that the overall trend, if I look the last 30 years, I think that technology has moved power to the people. On average, I think people have more power versus organizations than they did, and organizations I include governments and I include big business. I think we have more power versus them. I think that trend will continue into the future.
I want to start from the last question you asked, because this is kind of the most interesting for me. What will happen with our brain? I think something very good will happen with our brain, because we will be interacting not just with humans, but we will also be interacting with machines that will help us in various ways. Look at the medical arena, for example, okay? So there's going to be a lot of sensors on your body that will be monitoring your medical problems or medical issues, and will give you much more real-time information about various malfunctions. If you mentioned, I have a meeting in Haifa, it will tell you when to take a medication, or in fact, will release the medication for you when needed. It will notice that there's some problem and let you know if you need some medical attention, etc., etc. And of course, in the consumer world, it will also monitor and help you with your daily living in terms of consuming stuff, and will be communicating with you. So it's not going to be harassing you or forcing you in any way. It will be doing it in the most gentle way. If you want it, you can use it. If not, you don't. You will be looking at a bus, and it will tell you which bus it is, where it is going. You want to get on the bus, you don't want to get on the bus, it's perfect. You will be looking at an advertisement of a movie, it will tell you where to purchase the tickets or offer you to purchase the tickets. It's perfect. And in the real, like, I don't know, 10 years from now, it will be looking into your brain at the same time, and will help you communicate in the best possible way. So I kind of see the future very, very bright. A lot of people who do not interact with anyone will be interacting at least with a computer, okay? And those computers are quite smart, okay? And if in the past we predicted that when the internet era will actually fall on us, then people will be staying at home and not communicating with everyone. The exact opposite happened. So now a person from Tel Aviv finds a user group in Alaska that is interesting in some meditation that is happening in I don't know where, and suddenly they find a wonderful group that they can talk about something that they are interested in, and along these lines will happen when we'll know more on what's happening both in the brain and in the whole body. So
I would just say, from a modeling standpoint, if you change your choices every time, our model's going to be really wrong. So we won't actually be able to tell you what you're going to buy, because it actually won't work properly. So, which I think just, goes along with what other people have said. First of all, everything that we do is extremely both tightly legislated, controlled, and there's a very significant privacy and opt-in requirements for everything that we do from a research standpoint, obviously. But again, it's a choice issue, and it's about, if you look at our ability to actually predict based on information we're getting, there's two things. One, are we looking at a representative sample? There's some issues around just some of that. But secondly, if again, people are inconsistent, there's the ability to predict and have that choice is not lost. It will still be one in which I think the world would be really interesting, and it's all about what we want to best facilitate our lives, to be honest, to enable us to spend more time in a social environment. I think it's over 70% of our friends live within a 5-mile radius, or 5 kilometers, depending whether I'm Canadian or UK that day, radius of the people around us. So it's still a very, very tightly knit social environment in which we live and focus on.
Okay. So what we're hearing is basically that you're pretty optimistic, but it comes down to choice, control, and I think the key word here is education, because we need to learn what we're facing in order to be able to use it in the way that's most beneficial for us. And that remains to be seen. We're out of time. I'd like to thank our panel members for a good time.